1996. This would mark the year of the survival horror juggernaut that is Resident Evil. Capcom would take the gaming industry by storm, making a series that would span many sequels and a variety of media adaptations, from stage plays to animated and live action movies. Next year will be marking the 30th anniversary of the franchise, and many fans are speculating as to what Capcom could do to celebrate the occasion, with many eyes looking towards a potential remake of the very first game in the series. Before delving into why a remake of the original would be a good or bad thing though, let's quickly look back at what made the original so iconic and loved across the world. Capcom didn't just make a horror game, they redefined gaming as a whole and defined the survival horror genre specifically, with it being one of the first mainstream games to blend exploration, puzzle solving and resource management with true tension and horror. The Spencer Mansion was an iconic location with creepy hallways, moody lighting and eerie silence, and it would create one of the most claustrophobic and unsettling experiences that would remain a core memory of many gamers across the world. Along with that came the fixed camera angles that added to the tension by limiting your field of view so you never knew what was around the corner. In addition to this, we had limited ammo and healing items that made every decision matter from start to finish. Inventory management actually felt stressful. Did you carry a key? Did you carry extra bullets? The tension at its core was truly a terrifying experience, and as a whole truly set the standard for survival horror gaming. The infamous tank controls added to the awkwardness and made movement feel clunky, but in a weird way also increased the fear factor, with many fans still loving the tank controls for what they were, with many becoming extremely adept at controlling the player through this quote-unquote awkward control scheme. And speaking of controls, I interrupt this video to say a quick thank you to GameSir for sponsoring this video. They were kind enough to send me one of their controllers that truly do allow you to get the competitive edge at an affordable cost, with controllers like the Xbox Elite controller and DualSense Edge from PlayStation selling at roughly £140 and £190 respectively at the time of this video's recording. GameSir sent me over this affordable wired controller that has a very nice tactile feel to all of its buttons, hyper-realistic quad motor triggers for phenomenal trigger feedback, and back paddles to truly customize your play. All of this at an affordable £50 or less if you're able to catch it at the right time on a sale. And I've been using this as my go-to controller for my PC, given I don't need any wireless functionality being sat at my desk when playing games, so this is perfect for any occasion. Once again, massive shout out to GameSir for sending this over, link is in the description. Now back over to the video. Another aspect of the original Resident Evil and what made it so iconic was the multiple playthroughs. You could play as Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine with slightly different storylines, items and puzzles, and this gave the game amazing replay value and sparked tons of discussions, especially regarding the points as to what storyline was canon. In addition to this, let's be real, the voice acting was awful and the dialogue was cheesy, but that cheesiness truly did give the game personality and made it unforgettable. Whether that was for the right reasons, that is up to the player to decide, but regardless, this was a truly pinnacle part of the gaming industry at the time, and the live action intro was peak 90s weirdness and in general super memorable. This would be one of the first times zombies felt really scary in a video game, slow, relentless, and often just out of frame until it was too late and they would be trying to get a bite of you. In the mid-90s, horror games weren't really a thing, so Resident Evil would be able to bring for the first time that cinematic horror to consoles in a new way, just as 3D gaming was taking off. It arrived right before the explosion of interest in a darker, story-driven and more mature style to video games, and it truly did deliver with what it was trying to execute upon. And of course, the success of the original was truly a blessing for Capcom, and it would pave the way for a whole franchise that, as I mentioned earlier in the video, would span across sequels, movies, remakes, and comics, and the original game truly is loved to this day. So, going back to the reason for the video, which is whether or not a 2026 remake for the 30th anniversary of the franchise would be a good thing or a bad thing. And I think there is a lot more good than bad, so we'll cover off all the good things first and then round out the video with what could potentially be the downfall of such an action from Capcom. And of course, the most obvious benefit would be the use of the RE engine and modern technology as a whole. They would be able to capture the original Resident Evil game in an even more terrifying and immersive way than ever before, with the utilization of the RE engine, being able to up the graphics, the lighting, the audio design, and so much more, being able to add ray tracing and dynamic shadows, spatial audio, all of that other fancy modern tech that we have access to now. As of course the original did come out in 1996, where they didn't have any of this, but in fairness to the developers at the time, they did do a very good job with the original for what hardware they had to work with. But of course now we have so much more that developers are capable of, so it truly would, hopefully, if done correctly, make a much better atmosphere and make it even more so terrifying than the original. In addition to this, it would be a nice fresh take on the game, assuming they are able to execute upon it similar to how they did the remakes of Resident Evil 2 and 4. If they were able to make a 2026 version with the same respect as the previously mentioned remakes, by keeping the core elements intact while modernizing the gameplay, fans would definitely eat it up. And it would also be a great chance for them to add more backstory, maybe even have some new areas or playable flashbacks. That the potential for this remake is endless, and of course it's always nice to have some more character depth, given the first Resident Evil game didn't do too great of a job with fleshing out its characters, which in fairness to the game itself, it was trying to juggle many areas of a game without having to draw back on the horror, which clearly was the focus of the game. But with a remake, they would be able to delve even more into Jill, Chris, Wesker, Barry, Rebecca, all of the characters, fleshing out their arcs and dialogue, hopefully without losing the campy charm, given the characters will be inexperienced at the time, so they can have a bit of a play with the dialogue compared to how they will be able to play with the dialogue of the characters if it was a sequel game like Resident Evil 9 for example. And one of the segments of the game that I would love to see fleshed out slightly would be the beginning of the game, where maybe we could start up in the RPD and then slowly progress towards the mountains and then into the mansion. Of course, that's just one of the areas that they could expand upon, but there are so many other areas that they truly could flesh out, and definitely drop your comments down below as to where you think they could improve upon the game. Then we have, of course, the refined controls and accessibility areas, and let's be real, tank controls probably are a thing of the past, and fixed camera angles probably as well. And I feel like if they did do a modern remake, they would probably go for either third person, which I think would be the most likely option, or maybe even first person, which has its own array of benefits. Of course, there are a few drawbacks in certain circumstances. It depends on the player's perspective, whether or not you're a fan of third person or first person. In this case, I feel like a lot of the games where we know who the characters are, like Chris and Jill, opposed to Ethan Winters, where we don't know what he looks like, third person makes more sense, but they could still go with a first person route, given the mansion is quite close quarters, so I feel like first person would be very fitting. But regardless, it would be really cool to see the mansion up close and not in a fixed camera angle style, although they could even add the fixed camera angle as a little extra mode where it's slightly different with the enemy spawns and how they react, but the fixed camera angle is still an option for players that miss that. Whether or not you love it or hate it, a extra mode would be the perfect way of doing it, so it pleases all types of fans. But then as for why it could be a bad thing, I will keep this short and sweet, as I feel like this is the obvious answer. and that is the oversaturation. If Capcom does keep remaking its old hits too often, it might start to inhibit some kind of burnout with the fans, and maybe even just look like a straight up cash grab. The original 2002 remake does exist, and it is fantastic, and it is a key reason many people think that this game doesn't need another remake. So a new remake could have the risk of feeling redundant if done incorrectly, but if it is able to try and truly push things forward for the sake of this new remake timeline, I think it could be an extremely smart move by Capcom, especially if done for the 30th anniversary. But with that said, guys, that does bring us to the end of this video. Definitely drop your comments down below as to what you think of this potential remake, and if you think it should be used as the celebration for the 30th anniversary of the franchise, or if you think it should come after the other speculated remakes such as RE0, Code Veronica, and of course the inevitable RE5 remake that was clearly hinted towards at the end of 2023's RE4 remake. And I look forward to reading all of your comments. Be sure to smash that like button if you did enjoy. It is extremely appreciated, it helps out the channel a ton, and subscribe for a lot more Resident Evil content. Don't forget to join our Discord, link is at the top of the description, and thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.